in the deep south areas, but in central and in north as well. When you look at the complete collapse of infrastructure, roads, bridges, communication networks, and so on, it compounds the crisis in utilities and infrastructure. However, what has really been a terrible cause for concern is really the continuing horrific saga of the overpowering by criminal elements on the hapless population of Trinidad and Tobago. We have reached the point now almost of no return, where the country is not only under siege, but the nature of these criminal acts suggests that there is a sort of depravity, as one editorial put it, I think a few days ago, mindless depravity in terms of the commissioning of criminal acts against citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And while all of this is happening, you all will recall that there was a cabinet retreat at the cruising facility a couple of weeks ago before the Prime Minister jetted off to New York, at which there was high expectation that there would be a cabinet reshuffle. In fact, things are so bad now that the population is reshuffling the cabinet without the Prime Minister's action, because the population are suggesting that there must be a cabinet reshuffle, and they are actually appointing ministers and dismissing ministers. With Minister Hines in particular, anytime there's a rumor of a cabinet reshuffle, his name is called first, and one editorial went so far to say that the country wished that that particular rumor was true. That is where we are. Minister Hines has developed this reputation now of of sleeping on the job, and even when Mr. Hines is awake, it appears that his mind is asleep. So he may be awake, but his mind is asleep. In this recent horrific matter where three children and an adult, I believe, were brutally murdered at the heights of Guanapo, the police commissioner mentioned this in passing at the end of a press conference. Minister Hines was more morbid. He suggested that there was a Hollywood crime drama story that we should look forward to. These are lives, these are children murdered brutally like this, and the Minister of National Security calling upon us to wait for the Hollywood type drama story as if something will emerge. That speaks to a lack of compassion. You would think that in a decent country with decent government, a minister and a commissioner of police would have visited the community, the family, and so on in the event of this type of horrific incident. But there you have it. So that I want to begin my discussing crime by indicating that Minister Hines must go. He must be dismissed or must be asked to resign as Minister of National Security. I also wish to indicate that I am particularly outraged by this senseless, mindless murder of the children. We cannot dismiss it and say, well, their parents or grandparents or tanti or nenen may be involved in something. Killing children is wrong. And apart from Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa and the Opposition United National Congress, there is no outrage. And this morning I want to indicate that I am outraged that there is no outrage, where children have been murdered in this fashion. I am outraged that there is no outrage. And you look at the society, what is the business community saying about this? What the different civil organizations, the faith-based organizations? And I can't help but feel, is it because those children were in a particular community? Is it because they are in a lower income working class community? Had it been elsewhere, they would have called, groups in this country would have been calling for citizens to drive on the road with their lights on during the day. They may have been calling upon us to lie down in front of the parliament and circle the parliament with us lying on the ground. But is it because these are working class, poor people, the children themselves, of a particular class? That is why I'm so outraged that this incident has led to silence by key stakeholders in the community. people who talk at the drop of a hat, organizations that churn out press releases almost every day. They say nothing. It was only Mrs. Prasad Bisesa and the United National Congress that spoke out on this matter. And Mrs. Prasad Bisesa has a crime plan that she has been articulating, not today, for years on our Monday night platforms and various other fora where she has been speaking about dealing with this matter. And while this is happening, Minister Hines is completely asleep. And as I said, even when he's awake, his mind is asleep because he's talking about wait for the story. There is no story. Children have been murdered, and it is the role of law enforcement and government to get to the bottom of it, than indicate that we don't have motive, we don't know what's happening. That is the sad state of affairs that we find ourselves in. When we look at this, the incidents of crime, are you as members of the press, members of the national community, noticing people are holding up KFC delivery vans and thieving chicken and chips? When this happened, the police commissioner said they should get security guard to escort the delivery for chicken and chips. Now people are holding up people at the ABN machine. So what should we do? Every citizen should go with a Rottweiler and a pit bull when they go to withdraw a few dollars. Mrs. Prasad Bisesa again has made an important statement on this matter, indicating and calling upon the banks to restructure their business and allow customers to go in the bank to transact their business rather than exposing innocent citizens by these ABN machines where they're exposed to criminal elements, to thieves. A few hours ago, an off-duty policeman was attacked in front of a casino in South Trinidad by bandits who were trying to rob him. He's in the hospital now. So that this is where we have reached. Members of the press, I mean, you don't want to ridicule the situation. It's serious. But a few days ago, thieves, they stole horses. They stole horses. They thieved KFC. They robbed churches. Patients at a health center were held up. You go sick to a health center and you get robbed. That is where Trinidad and Tobago has reached. And I am predicting, this may sound frivolous, but I am predicting, if this continue by Christmas, bandits will be invading homes to steal the gifts from under the Christmas tree. That is where we are now. And Mr. Hines is hopeless, clueless, mindless, and hapless. And the Prime Minister is asleep. He is in New York addressing some empty rooms all over the place. Mr. Hines is asleep. The Commissioner of Police is concerned with ceremony and so on. And this is where we are today. This is where we are. Mr. Hines is dangerously incompetent to occupy the office of Minister of National Security. And again, I make the point that apart from the opposition leader, we have had no outrage on such a serious matter. Such a serious matter that confront us. The situation is getting worse. And we have the articles to demonstrate all of this. I would like to come to another point related to crime, in which it has come to our attention, those of us in elected office and in the opposition and so on, that the business community is under siege as well in a different way. We now have a situation where, unbelievably, business persons are reporting that they are at the mercy of gang leaders and gang members who now demand, quote unquote, security money. This is extortion. Demand payment of a sort of illegal tax that gang members, some in jail as well, contact business persons and demand this. And if they do not pay, their family members could be kidnapped and murdered. Their homes could be invaded and attacked. The business community. There was a double murder in St. Helena, I believe, recently. We have it here. A double murder in which business persons were murdered in a most brutal fashion in St. Helena. This comes on the heels of the quadruple murder at the heights of Guanapo. And I'm asking the question, to what extent is this linked to attempts, to get money from the business community by menace? And I raise this matter as a very serious issue affecting the business community. And it is not surprising that then one understands that the business community, businessmen and women, are shutting down their businesses, migrating to other parts of the Caribbean and North America because of this development. When that happens, it has an implication for economic development, for jobs. When a businessman closes down his hardware or his pharmacy or his whatever, people lose their job. They become unemployed. Families go without food, without school books, without school uniforms. So it's a complete web of disaster we are facing. And this morning I issue a call to the business associations, the same ones that are always on the throat of the opposition to support anti-gang law and so on. I ask the business community and their organizations this morning, come out and make a statement. Make a statement, a strong statement on this matter, on extortion by gang members on the business community. I call on the business community to make a statement on this matter, because it may be that we'll have to review, to amend, to look at the laws. Just how we faced a crisis before, I think in the early part of the 28, 9, 10 and so on, with kidnapping for ransom, and then the law was changed to deal with that, we may have to amend the Larceny Act. The Larceny Act deals with a matter called demanding with menaces, with intent to steal. This is an old, colonial type of legislation. The Larceny Act, Section 32 says any person who, with menaces or by force, demands of any person anything capable of being stolen with intent to steal the same is liable to imprisonment for 5 years. Now, imprisonment for 5 years when you are murdering the relatives of business people, when you are asking for hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of dollars in quote-unquote security money, demanding that from jail in some cases, the children, the relatives of business people could be murdered, and the penalty for that is 5 years. We have to review this. This is something that we'll probably have to review, to look at, to ensure that we protect the business community and those involved in that sector from this criminal extortion. And maybe the TTPS as well. Just how we have an anti-kidnapping squad, they should also have an anti-extortion unit established in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to deal specifically with this. Because that issue of demanding money with menace is, I believe, captured in the anti-gang legislation as well. So that you have to strengthen the Larceny Act, keep it in the anti-gang legislation, and increase, of course, the penalty. Increase the sentence for these types of offenses. Because let us be real, no member of the business community will walk into a police station to go to the desk constable to say, my name is John Smith, I run a business somewhere, and a person who I believe is a gang member is threatening me and my family unless I pay him. No businessman will do that. We all know that. I mean, for better or for worse, there is a challenge with the trust in the police service and the integrity of the police service and the population's feeling of trust. There is an issue. So no businessman will go in a police station and report that. That requires a more delicate, intelligence-driven, sophisticated unit of police officers to deal with that matter. And that is a matter this morning I would like to flag. And get the resources to deal with this. The government is always claiming they don't have resources, they don't have money, and their shoestring budget and so on, and millions of dollars squandered. We told you a few weeks ago, $132 million for a car park in San Fernando that was first costed at $60 million. And I promise the national community, when we return to office, which is soon, we will investigate that matter. I remind you, in case you forgot, a few weeks ago in the local government election, the people of Trinidad rejected Keith Rowley and the PNM. The UNC got an overwhelming majority of the popular vote. Notwithstanding the EBC and others cut up boundaries and fix boundaries and council, so it will read 7-7. That's fine, but that's how they cut up boundaries. So it will read that way. But the majority of citizens who took the opportunity to go to the poll voted for the United National Congress. And the UNC, as you recall, did not contest all those seats, only 110, I believe, and 31 contested by our partner, the NTA. The PNM was boasting of contesting all, and they were soundly beaten by the United National Congress. So they have no support in Trinidad, majority support, and believe it or not, they have none in Tobago. They were wiped out in Tobago, they were wiped out in Trinidad, and this is why it is a lame duck government today. A lame duck government that cannot get their hands on, and get their hands on the wheel. Because they have lost in the local government, they have lost in the Tobago House of Assembly. So they have lost both islands, the popular support. And that is a serious matter when a government is on its knees and the criminal elements are on the ascendancy. That is what we are seeing here. So, in terms of resources, I told you, we now have evidence before us, information before us, that the government is still paying a British lawyer by the name of Kate McMahon, British lawyer, who has been made an SRP in Trinidad. Do you know Kate McMahon, a British citizen, I believe is a superintendent of police in Trinidad? This lawyer in England is a superintendent of police in Trinidad, came a few weeks ago at the end of August, I believe, with a next bill to the government for $5 million more on top of $45 million paid before. I am asking the government this morning, since this lady SRP, Superintendent of Police, is investigating opposition members, that is her mandate, I say that without fear or favor, her mandate is investigating opposition members. And she's demanding now, asking for $5 million more on top of $45 million, so we are told. Did she recently meet with the Attorney General Reginald Amor and Minister of National Security Fitzgerald Hines? Why would government ministers be meeting with a police, an SRP, police officer of Trinidad and Tobago, investigating opposition MPs and opposition projects when we were in government, meeting with ministers of government of the PNM? That speaks to that diabolical connection between the politicians in government and external forces working against the opposition in Trinidad and Tobago with a political agenda. And in the coming days, we intend to write the British High Commission on this matter, where citizens of Britain, made police officers in Trinidad and Tobago, are working with politicians in the cabinet to chase after, to persecute opposition politicians. Because we know the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service have already indicated in one way or another that there's not much there to do in terms of several projects of the People's Partnership. The police indicate that. But Hines and Amor and Rowley and Stuart Young are paying millions of dollars to a British citizen who has been made a superintendent of police. And that is a matter we intend to raise with the British High Commission. Because we believe, and former Minister Surjwatan Rambachan, I believe, had spilled the beans on this. We believe it was the British High Commission in the first place that worked with this government in 2016 or thereabout to bring British citizens here to investigate and to persecute opposition politicians. That is a very, very serious matter, diplomatic matter as well, and we intend to be to keep that on the front burner. So the government cannot claim they have no resources. They have no resources when they are squandering money this way and cannot give the police the resources. Another issue I would raise at this time is a matter that has been in the public domain, is a matter that involved our international image and the work of successive governments, I must say, from the year, I believe, 1998 to today. All governments are working to fight white-collar crime. All governments have been mandated by international commitments to put a framework and institutions, policy and law in place to confront white-collar crime. Because white-collar crime is transnational. It crosses all borders. It involves sophisticated and complex processes using the banking institutions, financial institutions, political institutions, and so on. And therefore, Trinidad and Tobago, like many countries of the world, have been working for 20 years to establish independent institutions to confront white-collar crime. This is why, to some of us, every 6 months the bank need a due diligence paper. Have you all noticed that? Every 6 months they ask you for a copy of your ID card. The same ID card you have for years. The banks are working, other institutions are working to deal with white-collar crime. Money laundering, financing of terrorism, corruption-related issues, racketeering as they call it in the United States, and so on. So we are developing institutions that all governments work hard to build institutions, to not only to conform with international requirements and comply and so on, but we work because we are dealing seriously with white-collar crime. We got a judgment. A judgment was in the public domain a few weeks ago, in which, believe it or not, the director of the Financial Intelligence Unit, one Mr. Nigel Stoddard, had to go to court to explain to the High Court why it is, under his watch as acting director, I believe, ordered and demanded from banks financial information on former Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith and his wife, Mrs. Nicole Dyer Griffith. The FIU wanted private banking information on these two persons, plus others, and I'll come to that in a few minutes. Mr. Stoddard refused to indicate to a court of law whether he had satisfied the legal requirements to get banking information on a citizen. He told the court of law, I took an oath of secrecy, so I can't tell you whether or not I did that. Could you imagine? So if you commit murder, you'll go to the court and say, I took an oath of secrecy, I can't tell you if I killed somebody or not. The court ruled that the FIU, imagine the Financial Intelligence Unit, a so-called independent unit in the government, I believe under the Ministry of Finance, violated the constitutional rights of the claimants, Mr. Griffith and Mrs. Dyer Griffith, violated their constitutional rights, abused its power, acted irrationally, illegally, unlawfully. And this is the Financial Intelligence Unit. Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa, in a statement dated 19 September 2023, called upon Mr. Stoddard to resign forthwith in the face of this. Resign forthwith. That you went to court and you could not defend yourself in court. You could not tell the court if you had in your hand what is called suspicious reports and so on, upon which you base the application to get financial information on citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. So this organization that was supposed to be impartial and neutral became the subject of a court judgment that it violated the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. And this is an abuse of power and a subversion of the democracy of Trinidad and Tobago under Keith Rowley. Was Keith Rowley involved in this? Did he demand that the FIU illegally look into banking information of citizens of Trinidad and Tobago? These were the questions, and the opposition leader called upon Mr. Stoddard to step down immediately. Well, he didn't step down. In fact, he may have stepped up, because they issued a statement, and this statement from the FIU dated September 20th, 2023. Now it's a two-page statement, but the gist of it said that the FIU maintains that knowledge of whether a suspicious transaction report, other suspicious report has been filed must be held in the strictest of confidence, and they did nothing wrong. Do you know the court asked the FIU, please tell us if you had a report upon which to act. They refused to give the court. The court went further to say, okay, don't tell the defendants. Just go in chamber and tell the judge alone. Just go and tell the judge alone. Do you know the FIU refused to inform the judge, the court itself, of whether or not they acted legally? And the court ruled. And the court ruled that the FIU, which is the government, must pay costs to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars for senior counsel and other lawyers. I am telling you today, ladies and gentlemen of the press, that we believe that 17 other citizens of Trinidad and Tobago will now sue the FIU and the government and claim cost. Because the FIU has said that they are not even prepared to tell a judge in chambers, not even prepared to tell the court, alone, not defendants, whether or not they acted according to the law. So they are a law upon themselves. So this morning, I can tell you that 17 other individuals may be suing the government, and each could get about $500,000. We are talking about $6 to $7 million in costs on this matter. 30 organizations have been involved in this. If 30 organizations sue the FIU on the same matter, using the same arguments, and the FIU takes the same position, $15 million gone again. We are facing a bill here of $25 million that the FIU will have to pay. The taxpayer, forget FIU, the taxpayer will have to pay $25 million for the illegal actions of Mr. Stoddard and the Financial Intelligence Unit. And that is what we are warning for. Today I call upon the banks as well. The banks in Trinidad and Tobago must be diligent. In fact, the banks need to be a watchdog on the Financial Intelligence Unit and not the other way around. The law established that the Financial Intelligence Unit is a watchdog to monitor suspicious transactions by a legal process. Today, the banks must now monitor the Financial Intelligence Unit because they have been found by a court of law to be in breach of the Constitution and the law. So I call upon the Bankers Association and the head of all those banks that happily declare all their profits and so on. Please, you must now monitor the FIU, because it will not be long before citizens sue the bank as well. Because if the FIU is seeking to get banking information illegally and the banks provide it, they can join them in an action, and the banks will have to pay as well. And the final matter on this, I will make the point. The image of Trinidad and Tobago as a serious democracy, as a law-abiding community, as a country committed to the rule of law, has been undermined by the Financial Intelligence Unit. The image, the international image, because the FIU operates in a global framework through the Global Forum and other FATCA or other types of institutions. They operate in a global framework, so that the international image of Trinidad and Tobago has been tarnished by this development. How will the organizations in Brussels, Switzerland, Washington, London, New York respond to a unit where the head of the unit has been found by a court of law to violate the constitutional rights of citizens and to breach the law? How will the international community look at us? This is a shame. This is a scandal. They have tarnished the reputation of Trinidad and Tobago as a country serious about fighting white-collar crime, which several governments, I must say, including the Pandey administration, the Manning administration, the Prasad Bisesa administration, worked very hard to ensure that we reached a certain stage where we could be taken seriously. Today, when they reflect in London and Brussels and Geneva and so on, they will say, but the director of this unit in Trinidad and Tobago was found to be in breach of the constitution of the country and the laws of the country. And they will have to think twice before they engage in serious discussions or engage in serious policy planning with this agency in Trinidad and Tobago. So I raise that matter because it's a very, very serious matter, and I believe that we ought to take that very seriously, that Financial Intelligence Unit issue. And as I'm on the international issue as well, and dealing with that, I want to remind persons that quite recently the European Commission issued a statement, which I have in my hand as well. Fight against illegal fishing. Commission identifies Trinidad and Tobago as a non-cooperating country. It's dated Brussels, 25th September 2023. Now this is just a couple days ago, you know. And the long and short is that a matter from 2016 to today continues where we are not Trinidad and Tobago has been found to be non-cooperating in terms of establishing a legal framework, a policy framework, programs to deal with this matter of illegal fishing and the international implications. And I want to remind the population, these are serious issues in the global community, right? In border issues and resources that cross, where there are dispute with borders. Guyana with Venezuela now has a serious matter before the international community and before the political community. This is an important matter for island states and so on. Illegal fishing and so on. It creates enormous political pushback, diplomatic problems, and resource problems as well, because it is an economic matter as well. And they said this country, Trinidad and Tobago, has serious shortcomings, a lack of progress in addressing matters, which were first adopted in 2016 after the hard work of the People's Partnership. The People's Partnership did the legwork on this matter, and in 2016 everything collapsed. Everything collapsed, and there are serious threats to the sustainable exploitation of the resources, sea resources, jeopardizing the foundation of common law policies and European Union international efforts. This is where Trinidad and Tobago has reached now. So our non-compliance, non-cooperation has led to a very serious condemnation by the European Commission. Now, they couldn't take all the money they used to spend on Superintendent SRP Kate in England to deal with this matter. This is where we are now. Another embarrassment for Trinidad and Tobago in this issue. I just wanted to end by raising a couple other matters, which I believe is also in the public domain. We have also received the very serious matter of a crisis at the NIB, where the National Insurance Board faced a gap of $1.2 billion between income and paid benefits. We have been flagging in the opposition a crisis at the NIB for several years. Several years we have been talking about this, where the government has mismanaged the resources of the state. The NIB investment income has been falling. We have also indicated that the NIB investment portfolio fell, and there was a collapse in terms of the portfolio income at the NIB and the inability to sustain itself, with serious implications that have been pointed out by the International Labour Organization and other international bodies, where it puts in jeopardy future payments to citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, including workers. And the implications for this are very deep in the coming days. In the coming days, I believe the opposition will speak at length on these matters during and outside of the coming budget debate, because it has serious implications in terms of the government's attempt to raise the retiring age, payments to persons who are qualified for national income benefits and so on. And the government has been talking about modernizing and updating this sector for ages. But this is again another broken promise. I mean, if they can't just fix this illegal fishing business and collaborate to get conformity with international agreements, one wonders they will not be fixing anything in the NIB. So it is the United National Congress, our incoming administration, that will have to sit around the table with the stakeholders and deal with this NIB matter. Deal with this non-compliance with the fishing matter. And I wanted to cite this, and as I say, spokespersons for the opposition will speak on that as well. Members of the press, there's also an issue that I wish to raise, but in an abbreviated manner, because our members of parliament, the Honorable David Lee and I believe the Honorable Senator Wade Mark, have spoken at length on this matter. I just wanted to reiterate the issue. The government, of course, has sent Stuart Young to Venezuela. Now, look what happens here. Mr. Young goes to Venezuela. When we were in government, we had a protocol where when ministers travel abroad on serious government matters, not to attend a ceremony of some kind or something, serious government matters, they come to the parliament and make a statement. It's called a ministerial statement on their trip. Where you went, what details you have to share with us, the nature of any agreements reached, how did you progress. This government has this habit that they have put in the public space. They account to no one. They bring no disclosure or transparency on anything. So we are seeing Stuart Young is in Venezuela. He's holding a red folder in his hand. He signed something. Now, you don't know if that red folder has a grocery list in it. If that red folder has the school book list. We don't know. I am saying the government must open the red folder and come clear with the population via the parliament and indicate the nature of any agreement dealing with dragon gas. Every time their backs are to the wall and they're on the ground, they come with somebody sign something somewhere. And believe it or not, even some members of the press and in the national community feel good. They say, well, that's nice, the dragon gas deal is coming to fruition. But you see, the people who write in that did and themselves don't know if it's a school bag list in the red folder. You know? They don't know nothing in the red folder. They just go with what they hear. And this government is not a government to be trusted. You cannot trust anything they say or do. They had banned, sanctioned officials from Venezuela landing secretly here. The opposition had to expose the government. So brothers and sisters in the press, what I'm putting to you is the PNM is now an opposition in waiting. They are an opposition in waiting. One foot is already out the door. They are signing all types of deals at a time when there's a lame duck government in office. They ought not to be signing far-reaching, path-breaking agreements with any government because they're on the way out. And we call for transparency, openness, and accountability on this dragon gas. Because we have read in the international financial press, imagine citizens of Trinidad and Tobago must read Bloomberg, must read The Economist, must read some of these news, Reuters and so on, to find out what Stuart Young did in Venezuela. Because we can't read the Guardian, Express and Newsday, because nobody says anything. We are hearing and we are reading, it is in the Bloomberg story, that gas they are talking about is to come to Trinidad to process and all to be re-exported to Europe. That is a fact. Bloomberg carried that now, unless Bloomberg make a mistake. That is where we are. So the gas we are talking with Dragonfield and all that thing, that is not for domestic use. That is not a power. That is not to power Trinidad and Tobago industry, manufacturing, chemical plants, job creation in industry in Trinidad and Tobago. That is not for that. That is to come to Trinidad and to be re-exported to Europe. And the Venezuelans are moving that way because, of course, they are in the business, the gas business, and they want to make money. So that no gas will stay in Trinidad and Tobago that will be used for the development of Trinidad and Tobago. They will get a little buck or two here and there for processing and then re-exporting. And that is a serious matter that we need to address. The resources that come here should be for the people of Trinidad and Tobago if we are processing. The same thing happened. Keith Rowley closed down the refinery. And the products that the refinery made, we now order. We have to buy internationally, use foreign exchange that we have a crisis with again, to buy products that we were producing before. As I said in a meeting a few months ago, Keith Rowley is like a man who sells a fridge to buy ice. You sell the whole fridge because you have to buy ice. That is what happens there. And this matter of the dragon gas, we call for serious transparency in the parliament. And I want to go further because we are responsible. Many of us have served in government. I served in government not once, twice. If it is that there are issues in that agreement, for one reason or another, that you have for commercial reasons and so on, to remain confidential, there is a joint select committee that deals with energy in the parliament. Those agreements can go to that meeting so that a joint select committee of parliament can oversee and understand what is happening and share what can be shared to the national community. But it cannot be that Stuart Young goes to Venezuela, sign a receipt from Starbucks or McDonald's or something, put it in a red folder and say we have a deal. And that is their modus operandi. We are counting, there have been not less than 22 occasions Keith Rowley and Stuart Young have traveled abroad on energy matters, and there are no notes, there are no meetings, there are no memoir, there are no reports on those meetings. In fact, we asked questions in Parliament. They want to negotiate gas price and didn't even carry one technical person from the Ministry of Energy. I asked again in Venezuela, did the PS go? Did the head of legal go? Did the chief technical person at the ministry go? We are just seeing red folder passing up and down. And we don't know, we don't have a clue as to who negotiated what, the conditions, what will it cost us, what will it not cost us. And that, I believe, is another scandal in the making if we don't deal with it. The last matter I wish to raise here concerns a critical matter at VIMCOT, Ministry of Works and Transport. Now, this Ministry of Works and Transport has been under the gun as a result of complete inefficiency, incompetence. I remind you again, the mosquito crack, the road mash up down at the south end of the highway in the area of the Mosquito Creek. We estimated, based on our information, $64 million had to be paid extra to fix a road that was already fixed and paved. To this day, Minister Rohan Sinanan and the government has not made public the findings of any report to investigate that matter. This is almost a year and a half after. We cannot get a report on this matter. While that is happening, police vehicles, we were told in a joint select committee that about 40% of police vehicles broken down in a state of disrepair. Policemen sometimes ask the little mechanic shop in the village to help them to change a front light, headlight, to help them to fix an indicator. This is where we are in this country, you know. Police has asked members of parliament to donate water, ink, pen, paper. A particular unit in the police service contacted me, and anytime the police call me, I want to tell you, it is because they need my help. If I could contribute to buy a laptop for a child who had been a victim of a most heinous crime, and the child was going back to school and needed a computer, and if we would contribute. The police asked us in our districts and so on to assist, you know, with basic stationery that they need. This is where we are. But $50 million for Superintendent SRP Kate McMahon and her team to persecute and go after opposition members. While VIMCOT had a job under the Pandey administration, I recall well, our deputy leader, Jaylene John, I think, had responsibility for VIMCOT. And VIMCOT was on the move fixing police vehicles. As soon as a vehicle broke down, you go there, and in record time, they will work with the private sector, source parts, and so on, and fix. They were doing that. Today, VIMCOT has a matter where I'm reading a letter from May 16, 2023, Ministry of Works and Transport. I have the letter. In fact, I have what might be looking like an original copy of this letter. Sent to the Human Resource Manager at VIMCOT, Beetham Gardens Highway, and so on, so on, so on. This is from the Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Works and Transport. Look at this here. Do you know what is happening there? The Permanent Secretary is telling the Human Resource Manager. Now, it struck me as to why a Permanent Secretary, Deputy, is writing a Human Resource Manager. Normally, a Permanent Secretary will write a Chairman or a Chief Executive Officer. Normally, because the Permanent Secretary deals with the highest level of leadership in an organization. The Permanent Secretary is writing the Human Resource Manager to say, we are now investigating the misappropriation of public funds, improper procurement practices, and gross misconduct under the leadership of the CEO, Natasha Prince, and Neil Bennett, Chairman of the Board of VIMCOT. Could you imagine the ministry investigating both a chairman and a CEO for mismanagement, gross misconduct, procurement, improper procurement, misappropriation of public funds? Now, all fall down when chairman and CEO being investigated. I asked today, are they still in office? What has happened to this report? And is this report a credible report? When there's something like this in a state agency, the audit committee of the Ministry of Finance ought to investigate, not the ministry. These people appointed have been appointed by the politicians. So a ministry cannot be conducting a serious report on a political appointee when the minister, and I'm not saying this at all as casting aspersions on the conduct of Minister Rohan Sinanan, because when Mr. Neil Bennett was appointed, I asked the question, who was the Minister of Works? Was it the sleepy Fitzgerald Hines? Does Minister Hines have any relationship, knowledge of fraternal relations with Mr. Neil Bennett? not Mr. Sinanan. He was appointed by politicians. So they cannot have an in-house investigating committee. This must be two elements, the Ministry of Finance Audit Committee or indeed the fraud squad. When you hear misappropriation of public funds, improper procurement practices, gross misconduct, these are matters for the Integrity Commission and the fraud squad. Not for a little team in the Ministry of Works. This is themselves investigating themselves. And this matter in the Ministry of Works and Transport is a serious matter. So apart from all the collapse of the Cabo Star, the Caribbean Airlines negotiations that had the planes grounded for a while, and the cost of, I think, over $20 million, we now have corruption at Vimcot, where both a CEO and a chairman are the subject. Again, I cast no aspersions on them. They are the subject of an investigation. I have the letter in my hand. And we call upon the minister to come clean. Tell us what is the outcome of this and indicate why this matter has not been referred to the fraud squad. And they are cooking it up inside and they are doing an investigation internally. Once you hear things like this, you can't do internal elections and internal investigations in a ministry. It's more, some matter of policy and a policy wasn't implemented or some resource had to be transferred here and it wasn't transferred and so on. That is not for corruption and fraud. This is police matter. Integrity Commission in some cases. Depending, because there's a chairman involved, I believe he should be under the jurisdiction of the Integrity Commission as well. So that is a very serious matter I raise. Again, and while that is happening, as I said in the beginning, we have a situation where you have poor infrastructure, collapsed infrastructure, water crisis throughout the country, security crisis, and it continues. And Monday, I am sure Mr. Imbert will stand up and beat his chest and talk about what he did and how he's seeing what clear skies and so on. He will stand up and do that. He will stand up and do that. This is a gentleman who has contracted and shrunk the economy by 20% between 2016 and 2023. As I said before, he can genuinely go to his home and say, honey, I shrunk the economy. That is what he has done. The record is there. This economy between 16 and 23 shrunk by 20%. He shrunk the economy. So they will come and beat their chests and boast about this or that. And it will be the same promises, the same thing over and over and nothing. 8 years they cannot finish one little highway down in South that we started and was 80% completed. 8 years. They're talking about the central block in Port of Spain. That needs an investigation by itself over what has transpired there. San Fernando Waterfront Project. You know what is the Waterfront Project? They built a 2-lane highway and the highway mashed up already. When you go down San Fernando in the evening, you see 2 stray dogs and a crapper on the road. That is the Waterfront Project. So they have nothing to show. Absolutely nothing. And they were rejected properly by the people in Tobago, the people in Trinidad. We call upon this administration, please. If you don't take yourself seriously, take the electorate seriously. And end this charade. And call a general elections if you have to, because you have lost the mandate of the people. I want to lift the veils there and invite members of the press and other members of the national community to pose any question that you may wish to. Thank you very much. Yes.
Morning. Hi. Beyond your projections of what Mr. Ibbott may say about beating his chest in the budget, what other projections do you all have that may come to light? What is the UNC's take on that and what you expect to see based on the current situation of the economy, oil prices, and the state of the country?
Well, the crisis that confronts us is really a crisis of crime, infrastructure, utilities, poverty, and joblessness. And any serious government will have a strategic program to create jobs. This country has a crisis of joblessness, and they must have a program to create jobs, to ignite the economy. And construction is a key sector for this economy. In fact, Mr. Imbert, when he was Minister of Works, would you believe, made a speech in Parliament, and I have the memory of it. in which he made this statement. He said, without activity in the construction sector, the economy will crash. Today he's the Minister of Finance and the construction sector crash. So we expect that they will speak about jobs. You expect a decent government to have some renewed focus, fresh policy initiatives on dealing with the criminal elements. But the point I'm making is that we may want that, but quite frankly, I don't expect that. I may want that. I may desire the government to have a plan to create jobs, fight crime, ensure water is delivered to our population, fix the roads. But I don't expect that, because I've been listening to budgets for many years. And all they will do is they will beat the table and probably break down the parliament wooden table when they announce how much billions for this and billions for that and billions for that. And nothing will happen because they are dangerously incompetent. In the Ministry of Works, how much programs they have had for cleaning water courses. When we do the Standing Finance Committee after the budget every year, we say, but hold on, you had X $1 million for cleaning river and thing. What work did you do? Absolutely nothing. And I make this point because a general point I want to make. I should have made it earlier. This government believes that management ends with managers. Let me repeat that. This government believes that management ends with managers. It ends with managers in the state sector. So if we don't have water, that is WASA management. If we don't have security, it's the police. If we don't have roads, well, NIDCO and thing collapse. They're not doing their job. No. A People's Partnership government, a UNC government believes that management goes to the top. The government don't want the people to believe that there's something called political management. We know of political will, but there's political management. When we were doing large-scale construction of houses, and we gave 100 houses per week. I don't know if people recall that, or sometimes I myself feel it's a dream. I dreamt I was doing that. Every week we gave out 100 homes. Apart from the happy 100 people who collected, it was construction activity, job creation, income redistribution. The persons in the private communities, underprivileged communities, were working. And I could generalize here because it's not the root cause of crime. But when people are working, they don't have time in the night to go and rob nobody, When you have to get up 7 o'clock in the morning to go and take up a job that's giving you $200 a day or $180 a day or something, in the night you have to sleep, you can't go robbing people. So you create jobs as well so that the lower income groups will work. They will earn income. They will purchase food. They will not have to steal a box of chicken and chips. And the government ought to be focusing on their role. But they will want you to feel you're not getting water because of WASA. So how people are getting water over the years? Huh? How? It's the same WASA, same police, same Ministry of Works and Transport. So there is something called political management. But the government don't want you to believe that. They want you to believe that the deputy general manager and director at the state enterprise, he or she is the cause of the crisis. It is not Hines, it is not Stuart Young, it is not Faris Alwari, it is not Keith Rowley himself. It is not him. And that is something that we must also expose. Because it leads to inertia where people believe that one government, the next government, one party, the next party, the problem might not be fixed. No. That's a myth. That is propaganda. If you have political management, a strong, determined prime minister, and you have strong ministers who command their ministries, who drive ministries and so on, you will get the work done. So when you look at your PSIP, your Infrastructure Development Fund, they're spending. You know what they are doing and what they are not doing. When I was minister, by May, June, I would meet the heads of every state agency. And I could tell them that they're doing nothing. And if you continue that, you will not spend the money approved. So let's go and do something else. The government of Trinidad and Tobago today is on autopilot in that sense. Ministers believe their role is to cut ribbon, make speech, guzzle whiskey, wolf down shrimp, munch down lobster and so on. That is their job. They believe that's their work. They went to cruising to play cards. They went on a lime. They went to lime. They play cards and imbibe some beverage of one kind or another. They were into kicks-in, not serious business. They should have understood by now what work has been accomplished, what work has not been accomplished, and reroute policy and so on in a way that you deliver to the people.
terms of rerouting policy, do you think that national security should get top dollar this year?
Again, the issue is not what national security gets in terms of top dollars. And listen to me. If you go in the treasury with a backhoe and take out all the money and drop it into national security, nothing will change.
What's the solution?
The solution is you need to remove Mr. Hines, and eventually you need to remove, when the time comes through lawful means, you have to remove Keith Rowley and his administration. I don't know. You know, it's like some people asking me, how do you advise the captain of the Titanic after he struck the iceberg? What advice do you give to the captain of the Titanic after he struck the iceberg? So there's nothing you can really advise Mr. Hines, and that is the issue that we face.
Dr. Moonilal, I just want to piggyback off of Gail's questions. As it pertains to the budget you guys have been having, lots of consultations throughout the country. What is some of the feedback on the ground? What are you hearing from those on the ground?
Well, the United National Congress has initiated yet again, every year, a very robust consultative process with members of the community across the land, hearing from members. And one of the strategic approaches of Mrs. Prasad Bisesa in this matter is that we want to hear from people. So we are not going there to talk to ourselves. We can talk in Parliament. That is for the people. And we have had successful consultations, I believe, throughout in Shagwanas and elsewhere and so on. The East-West Corridor, Port of Spain, of course. Today, I believe, we have one ongoing today, I believe. Rio Claro. Thursday, I believe, San Fernando. Tomorrow, San Fernando. Wednesday, San Fernando, yes. Thursday, Pinal de Bay, of course, our area. And the people come there and they speak with monotonous frequency about the issue of crime, about water, about infrastructure and drainage, and of course flooding. Those are the issues people are speaking about health care, that certain elementary medication and so on, essential medication is not available in the public health sector when they go. They speak about the schools, that schools have not been constructed and fully occupied. The Ramai Trace Hindu School is 8 years now, and they have not completed it out of political spite for the people of Ramai Trace and surrounding districts. It is not open now. 8 years. It was 95% complete in 2015. They had to go and do the same job over and over again. So they paid twice for fencing, twice for roof, twice for landscaping, all type of things. So to come to the question, there's no advice really you could give Fitzgerald Hines in that sense, because I think he struck the political iceberg already.
Let me just, one more question.
Sure, of course.
Let me just dial back to the EETP. One initial point you made.
Today?
Yeah, as it relates to crime.
Yeah, sure.
Right? You expressed outrage that there was no outrage as a result of what would have taken place in the Heights of Guanapa. You're the shadow Minister for National Security, Dr. Moonilal. You indicated that if by Christmas things are unabated, bandits will be breaking into homes to steal Christmas gifts, right? Ideally, if you were at the helm, what would you be doing immediately as it pertains to crime?
What I would do immediately, and Mrs. Prasad Bisesa has spoken on this on numerous occasions, is really return all the programs that this government stopped, restart them. The private sector initiative, citizen protection with the private sector, you can restart that easily. The model is there. You can restart the E999. You can restart the use of the Army Police Task Force. You can restart that, the collaboration, greater collaboration between the Defense Force and the police, and boots on the ground. This country is unpatrolled. This is why people could climb a telephone wire, a telephone post, and steal copper wire, because unpatrolled. This is why people can go with that level of brutality and invade people's home and know, well, the chances I will not be caught. The society is unpatrolled. They have to resource the police in a manner that is targeted at patrols. They have to deal with intelligence, get the relevant intelligence arms of the state working to support the police, and not spying on opposition members. So if you introduce the community comfort patrols, for example, that will help. That will help. the task force between Defense Force and police. And there are many, many programs, which I don't want to preempt, of course, other speakers, but there are many programs that they cut out. The National Operating Center, which was a coordinating mechanism in real time. Fire, police, army, customs, all of that. Coordinating in real time when there is an issue. You know, the CCTV cameras, we had 90% of the CCTV cameras functioning. They went with malice and broke the contract, stopped paying for cameras, and then 50% not working. Simple things like that. I was involved one day in an accident, minor. I called the police. I said, well, thank God I see CCTV cameras all around this point. You will get this man who hit and run. They said, boss, we want to tell you something. None of the cameras working. I went and fixed my car. That's the long and short. And Mrs. Prasad Bisasa had spoken about stand your ground. That is a critical, fundamental pillar of the opposition's position on dealing with crime. Stand your ground. Provide firearms for law-abiding citizens to protect themselves. Those are the things we are talking about. And we are saying do that within the confines of the law. Do that within the confines of the law. Allow citizens who qualify to have their firearm, to stand their ground and defend themselves and their homes. So these are some of the things that can be done relatively quickly. I spoke earlier about the last SNIAC, where you can look at the sentencing for extortion and bullying, demanding money with menace and so on. And our thematic is secure TNT. That is our thematic that we are working with, secure TNT. And, you know, we can provide about 25, 30 policy program initiatives. Most of it that could be implemented in the short term. But the PNM government has always had this problem, and I want to put it on the table. Anytime they come into power, they close down anything that the UNC did. So if we were doing something and it was working, they close it down. They say, we can't do that. The Children's Hospital, anybody ask how much children in the Children's Hospital? It opened because of a pandemic and then closed after the pandemic. The South Campus for Debe, a South Campus of the University of the West Indies, $500 million there. You know, they don't have a student there. That is malice.
8 years later.
8 years. The laptop program. Closed down the laptop program and then 5 years later begging the business community to give laptop to the student. And the most stupid thing the Ministry of Education advised students that they can now conduct online classes and so on. The only problem is they don't have a laptop. You know, so, but you conducting that on a calculator. So this is the lack of vision that we talk about. So to answer your question, yes, restart the programs that the partnership had in place.
And piggybacking on his question, the larceny act that he spoke of, what about other types of legislation, like the anti-gang act? We have to look at that again, and the bail act, special majority bills that in the past have failed.
We have the data. It's not before me now, but we can say with certainty that the opposition has supported over 90% of the legislation brought by the government to deal with crime, including an anti-gang and bail. We have supported it. It's there. They carried a propaganda blaming the opposition for crime. That was their narrative. So part of it was that the opposition wasn't supporting them in the parliament and so on. We have the data because it's a matter of public record.
If we have to look at
so, of course, we can't preempt anything. We meet and treat with what is on the table. And if they bring legislation to deal with crime, the opposition is mature, extremely responsible and accountable, and will meet and treat with it. If there are shortcomings, we'll point it out. If it's legislation that is good for the people, good for dealing with crime, we support, as we have done on countless opportunities. In fact, I believe this opposition and Mrs. Prasad Bisasa has supported this government certainly much more than the PNM opposition supported the partnership in 2010-15. In fact, Dr. Rowley was on record, is all over social media. I will not support the government in anything they do. We will isolate them out of office or something rubbish like that, he said. We have supported because we see crime as very important as a national issue, and Mrs. Prasad Bisasa expressed that compassion and that outrage with the recent quadruple murder involving the children at the heights of Bonapo. Okay, well, I think, yes, we have come to the end of the press conference. Let me end by again thanking members of the media for your tuning in to us, members of the national community, all the different audiences we have had on social media platforms. I thank the staff of the Office of the Leader of the Opposition to indicate to the national community that our consultations continue. We have consultation during San Fernando on Wednesday, Pinal on Thursday, and this evening, Rio Claro this evening. So members of the public are invited to attend on social media. You will get all the details on the UNC website, opposition leaders website, and many of the MPs and so on, that you are free to attend that. The opposition will be out in full numbers next week for the budget, and you can expect a very robust, very comprehensive response from the leader of the opposition and all members of the opposition to the upcoming budget presentation. So thank you all very much, and God bless.